Presentation skills. Tips and tricks to succeeding. My name is Steph Bennett. I'm a learning development tutor in the Hub. I do apologise about the echo today. I'm recording in a slightly different place. Today's aims: to develop an understanding of presentation skills and techniques to apply to an upcoming assessment. We will look at academic presentations, structure, Kumi's 2015 pedagogic design principles, presentation, and some tips for moving forward. Academic presentations. What, why, so what? You might be thinking, why have I been asked to do an academic presentation? Well, an academic presentation is a form of talk of a specific length, and it addresses a problem or answers a question. They're often accompanied by visual aids such as PowerPoint, and the reason we get you to do them in higher education is because we're trying to strengthen your communication and presentation skills in preparation for jobs, the future labour market, and collaborating with like-minded practitioners in your field. The so what of it all? Your academic presentation will develop and evidence your ability to communicate your knowledge and understanding about the presentation topic. The structure, finding that flow. Presentations are much like written assignments, and they often need an introduction, a main body, a conclusion, and don't forget your reference list. Less is more on the PowerPoint, so you could actually start by writing a script and then distilling the script down into bullet points on flashcards. And then you can place just the necessary information on the PowerPoint itself. Here is a screen grab from a website called Speech in Minutes. If you type in a number of words, it will tell you just how many minutes that equates to when spoken at either an average speed, or you can change it to a slow speed or a fast speed. So actually, you can break down the number of minutes you've been allocated into a number of words, and then that can translate into writing a script. Let's start with the introduction. We'll begin with a hook sentence, a catchy one-liner. It'll outline the topic, it'll grab the audience, and it will probably, most likely, include an introduction to you, who you are. Focus and purpose. You need to tell the audience what the big picture topic is that you'll explore during the presentation, and also why you'll be doing so. Then you need to provide that contextual information, a bit of brief background info, to lay the foundations of the big picture topic for the listener. You might also want to draw on your first citations here. It might include definitions or maybe a bit of history and background in that manner. And finally, the map. Signpost the audience through your presentation. For example, accordingly, this presentation will begin by exploring. Subsequently, it will discuss, concluding that. It just lets the listener know what's about to happen. The main body then. I know we use Peel paragraphs in written assignments, but technically they are also transferable to script writing, bullet point flashcards, and main bodies of presentations. Because whether it's spoken or written, you are going to be presenting points, you're going to be drawing on evidence from sources and literature, maybe even professional practice. You're going to be explaining what that evidence means and why it's significant, and you're going to be wrapping everything up and stating how that point clearly links back into the big picture topic you're exploring. So if we think about presentation main bodies in a logical narrative, Peel is probably the way to go. And I'll show you how you can actually break down Peels and distill them into bullet points for your flashcards in just a moment. I've said if you're going to be writing a script, your Peels could be around 200 to 250 words long. Yes, that is flexible, but what you don't want is kind of just one long continuous script, so the listener gets a bit lost in what you're trying to say. Also as well, you need to give yourself time to breathe and time for the audience to absorb the information before you move on to something new. You're aiming for unity and cohesion. Get to the point and stick to the point. Make sure that each of your sentences flows nicely into the next, and each of the points, the paragraphs that you speak, flow neatly into one another, so they flow logically, telling that story, telling that narrative. And you're always going to be looking for currency of information. Yes, you might draw on seminal authors or seminal literature from the past, but why not bolster that with something from the last 5 to 10 years to show how it's still relevant, how it still translates in the present day? You're looking for depth, which ties into criticality. How far can you push those ideas and arguments? Have you looked at the strengths and limitations? Have you synthesized and brought in multiple voices to back up or challenge ideas? Have you looked at what the evidence suggests, why it's significant, how it might be interpreted? And in some presentations, you might even be asked to reflect, possibly on your professional practice. Not always, but you might need to on certain courses. So that might be taking that objective standpoint, taking a look at experiences you've had, taking a look at your values or beliefs. What are the strengths and limitations of those things? How does the literature support or challenge those things? And how does that deepen your understanding? So these are all the elements that might at some point feed into a script or bullet point flashcards for a main body presentation. Here is a little guide on how to synthesize. Yes, I know this is a paragraph and you're not going to be writing paragraphs because it's not a written assignment, but synthesis can translate into presentations. Synthesis is basically about bringing multiple authors together who voice the same ideas on topics. You can see the little guide down the left-hand side, and then the example of the synthesis is in blue here. This example is available on the Learning Development Blackboard. And the reason why synthesis is so important? It's really great for bolstering what you're trying to say. Why say it with one voice when you can say it with multiple voices? The way you can do that in a presentation? Well, you can just flash the authors on the screen in a bracket in alphabetical order as you're talking about the idea you're trying to put across. You might even want to speak them, the authors, in the sentence. For example, you might want to say Castagno and McKinley, Harberman et al. And McConnell et al. Argue the need for building a caring relationship with each pupil. You might also want to check in with your tutor as to whether you need to speak the years out loud or whether you can just say the authors' names. If you do need to speak the years out loud, it might sound a little bit like Castagno and McKinley, 2008, Harberman et al., 2017, and McConnell et al., 2020, argue the need for building a caring relationship with each pupil. This particular paragraph is a really great example of academic practice, and here's why. It features signposting language, which is really important in a presentation to guide the listener. Phrases like, this is supported by, this highlights that, this notion could be applied, helps the listener gauge the flow of the presentation. It uses hedging language, so language that isn't definitive, language like could be, can therefore be. It also paraphrases. It doesn't use direct quotes. And in fact, paraphrasing is probably easier to put across in a presentation than it is to put a direct quote across in a presentation. It is possible that if you use direct quotes, you might just need them placed on the screen to emphasize that the words are not yours, but they are somebody else's. This paragraph also creates a really nice triangle of literature. And these pieces of literature might not be transferable to the type of course you're studying, but it's a really good example of how to demonstrate wider reading. This person has drawn on theories. We've got seminal theories there from Noddins. We've got more recent theories from McConnell et al. They've tied it in with governmental guidance. We've got the teacher standards, we've got the national curriculum. And then we've completed the triangle with a study, some study outcomes, some findings from page 2020. So it's all about bolstering the points you're trying to make from multiple angles. And it doesn't matter what course you study in, this is really good practice. Now let's go to the conclusion. To conclude your presentation, you are going to revisit the focus and purpose. You're going to start by restating what your presentation set out to do and why. You're going to summarise your key points by bringing together the most significant elements of your presentation, and you're going to reiterate their significance. Why are those things important? Why does the listener need to know about these things? And finally, you're going to tie up with next steps. Consider how your findings may impact your professional practice. Are there gaps in the literature that warrant further research in the field? What are the implications of your presentation's argument? And here is an example of how a script might be drafted. You can see I've got the introduction with 10% of the allotted time, hook, focus and purpose, background and map, the main body with 80% of the time. You can see I've written peel down the side in preparation for those ideas that I want to add into it. And finally the conclusion, again 10% of the allotted time, revisiting that focus and purpose, summarising, reiterating significance and next steps. So this is a skeleton structure and you can start to add to it as you develop a script. The 10%, 10% and 80% are just guidelines. You don't have to use that amount of time on those different sections. Totally flexible. And here is how you might distill the peels in particular into bullet points. You can see I've got point 1, so that's peel 1. We're going to talk about a caring curriculum and how it motivates learning. We're going to draw on the following authors. We're going to say that it improves ethos and school environment, and overall we're going to say that it positively impacts policy and practice. So these are just little nuggets to help remind me of what I've written in my script, and you can do a similar thing. You can see the caring curriculum is the point, the Castagno and McKinley is the evidence, the improve ethos is the explanation, and the positively impacts policy is the link. Do what's comfortable for you, but this really helps me. Pedagogic Design Principles, Kumi 2015. So Kumi developed a bunch of principles to help guide the development of academic podcasts. But actually the information is totally transferable to live presentations because podcasts, in a way, are very similar to academic presentations. So let's take a look at what Kumi has to say. Kumi suggests hooking the audience. You might want to sustain their interest by shocking them, surprising them, appetizing them, delighting them, creating suspense, entertaining, fascinating them, or captivating them. You might want to signpost them. What's coming later? What's coming next? What do they need to look out for? And why are we doing it? You can see these two are components of the introduction that we've just looked at. He says we need to facilitate cognitive engagement, pose areas for questioning, encourage prediction. And I think most importantly, establish relevance to professional life. This is the way that you interact with your audience and you get them on board by making it relevant to them. He then says you need to enable knowledge construction. You're basically feeding them the bulk of the information, you are informing them. So you might have images or diagrams on your PowerPoint, and you don't need to duplicate the words that you speak on the board. You might want to take snippets for real emphasis, but you don't need the bulk of your script on the PowerPoint. You need to pause to allow the audience to absorb and contemplate what you've just said. And that's why it's really good to keep in mind that peel paragraph structure. You need to build the construction of knowledge. The audience might not be specialists in every aspect of the topic you're exploring. So scaffold their knowledge building. Allow them to see the full context of the topic you're exploring. That might be current context, that might be historical context, it might be both of those things together and how one has impacted the other. And you might want to engage some existing knowledge they have and solidify it. So build on the things they already know to deepen their understanding. Then he talks about sensitizing. You might want to plant seeds, give them some food for thought. That might be some suggestions for future practice in some way. It might be suggestions for future research in a specific area. And personalize your delivery style to you, but make it consistent throughout. You might want to think about your intonation. That's the rise and fall of your voice. It's the expression of your voice. It's how fast you talk in some spots and how you slow things down in other spots for emphasis. It's about the pauses that you take to allow the audience to absorb what you've said. How about elucidating then? So I've just spoken about varying the tempo to indicate your syntax. Ensure that you're heard. If you are presenting in a room, book that room beforehand. See if your voice carries from the front to the back. And also alongside dynamics, think about diction. That is the pronunciation, the clarity of your pronunciation of each word. And that can help alleviate cognitive complexity. The way that you express, the clarity of your speech helps complex ideas be absorbed more clearly. It might also be about taking complex ideas and simplifying them so they are presented in bite-sized, understandable chunks for the audience. Remember, you're taking the audience on a journey with you, and try not to put too many images on a PowerPoint and overwhelm the audience, or too many words on the PowerPoint and again overwhelm the audience. Finally, reinforcing. You're going to repeat things from new angles. You're going to compare and contrast. That helps you to draw on those different academic voices. It helps to bring in your criticality. And you can create the synergy between words and images. For example, if I was to say the word penguin out loud to you, there might be an image of one in the background on my PowerPoint, and that really bolsters what you're trying to say. The last one, consolidate. This is obviously going to be part of the conclusion. You're going to revisit that focus and purpose and summarise the key points. You might also as well want to integrate complementary materials. There might be a handout, there might be a Q&A afterwards to help consolidate the ideas and information for the audience. And that's basically Kumis. Again, this is available on the Learning Development Blackboard should you want to have a look at it. Moving forward then. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Habits are stored in the muscle memory. They become automatic neural pathways, which is something we understand as muscle memory. It's a little bit more complex than that, but there's the basis of it. Nerves are natural. Chances are the more you rehearse, the likelier you are to alleviate some of those nerves and anxieties about kind of delivering this presentation. Breathe deeply, it triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, and what happens is that the oxygen helps to slow the heart rate and slow the mind. Again, there's a lot more complexity to that than I'm saying, but that's the basis of it all. Audience, they are your peers, they are your tutors, and they support you. They're not there willing you to go wrong. Remember, you're being marked more on the content than the performance. And if you are really concerned, please go and speak with your tutors because they're very understanding. Some helpful nuggets. Learning Development Blackboard. There's a section dedicated to presentations, and there's a section dedicated to the Wellbeing Toolkit, which is full of exercises and activities to alleviate any anxiety or nerves. If you need some sentence starters for inspiration, head to Academic Phrase Bank. If you need help with writing introductions, main bodies, conclusions, head to Scribr. And finally, the Academic Integrity Guide is really important for your APA referencing. So please head to that on Blackboard if you need to learn how to cite sources in text and reference them. If you have any questions or suggestions, my email is on the screen. Please feel free to get in touch with me. And thank you for joining me today. I hope this gives you some kind of help as you move forward with your academic presentations this year.